faces accordingly right here, right now. Everybody, good afternoon, July 25th, 2024. There is so much happening in the country that it was important for us to make sure that we were at the table and not having others dictate the conversation to us. My name is Michael Blake, founder and CEO of the Kairos Democracy Project, and here with many other my fellow freedom fighters in the movement right now in the work that has to happen to mobilize our country and our communities for causes that we are excited about. Too often, we have been listening and being told that there are policies that are not aspirational, that there's a vision that people can't align around, and we want to say it's the complete opposite. And we're very clear that we have permission to dream, we have permission to live out our policies, and we have permission and a declaration to be free. And so today, we have come together with many incredible partners on the line to announce Project Freedom. This is our effort, 16 different policy areas of focus across 7 states to make it very clear that people have a reason to be excited, to be mobilized across the country, not just this year, but consistently for the work that is happening. The site has now been launched. If you go to ourprojectfreedom.com, again, ourprojectfreedom.com, you will see the vision. And we're very clear, our freedoms are at risk, but we have freedom to dream. We will make sure that we are amplifying this. This is 2 tiers of the vision. First and foremost, again, I mentioned those 16 parts of the policy, the vision to be aspirational about what we deserve, but also to make sure there's a very clear contrast and choice about what's happening around Project 2025, which we find incredibly scary, that can destroy many of our communities for the policies that are being laid out, everything from the elimination of the Department of Education to stopping Head Start, et cetera. And so with that, we have many of our partners on the line that we're going to turn it over to at this time for them to rock. We want for everybody that's watching to make sure that you also amplify within your respective causes as well. Let me turn this over to an incredible brother, not only because of clergy, because he also has a great name. Anyone that has a Mike or Michael in their name is already blessed and highly favored right there. So let me turn this over right now to Pastor Mike McBride to take it over from here. Pastor Mike.
Thank you, Brother Blake. I sense no lies in your previous statement as well. It is a gift to be here with everyone. Obviously, as my preacher elders would say, we are living in perilous times, but we are also living in promising moments and opportunities because of the opportunity we have as a collective, as a community, to push back against the hopelessness, to push back against some of the despair, and remind ourselves that we always have a North Star towards freedom and justice, and that North Star is always before us. I am Michael McBride. I am the co-founder of the Black Church PAC, and super excited to be able just to provide a quick framing for our conversation with a host of powerful leaders and organizations. Let me first start off by saying that our collective that is gathered under this framework of Project Freedom Now represents well over decades of organizing experience individually and collectively hundreds of years of organizing experience, which just is to say that we are not new to this. We have, we believe, a very credible pulse on our communities. And at the same time, we also want folks to know that this is a living, breathing document. It is a platform that we are hoping to invite more of our comrades, our friends, those who love peace and justice, who are specifically concerned about Project 2025 and the way it is attempting to systemically dismantle the precious freedoms that so many of us have fought for ourselves or have extended the fight for freedom and liberation for our people and our communities. This extensive platform will serve as a foundation, we hope, will be an entry point for many others who are looking, particularly across these 7 states of Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, Nevada, Ohio, New York, and some places and points in between, appreciating that there has to be a response to Project 2025 that is grounded in the many years of organizing, the shared values of so many of our freedom fighters, organizers, folks committed to liberation. we are hoping, as you hear through the duration of this call, the many voices that will speak about the unique perspectives and the work that has been won and the work that is continuously being pushed forward, that we don't have to start from scratch in order to defeat Project 2025. As a matter of fact, many of us have been fighting this fight before we knew of a Project 2025, because many of us have a project forever. As the Queen Tamika says, we will fight forever until we need freedom, and we want freedom, and we demand it now. And so I'm super excited. I'm super blessed to be able to just remind those who are listening to us that we want and we need coordination. One of my elders from one of our Muslim communities in the Bay Area told me that a disorganized truth will find it difficult to defeat an organized lie. And we know that there are lots of organized lies in Project 2025, lots of organized threats. We want to figure out how can we begin to coalesce our efforts, stay in some specific committed lanes, but come together in unity and power to defeat the threats that are imminent and the threats that we have not yet seen rendered visible to us. I'm super grateful now to announce or to introduce one of our co-conveners of this effort. She is the co-founder of Until Freedom, along with a host of other folks who will be able to speak during this call. And she will kind of share her remarks and take us further. Please welcome Tamika Mallory, co-founder of Until Freedom.
Thank you so much, Pastor Mike, and to all of my friends and comrades who have gathered here today, and of course, those from the media who are covering this great effort that we have been very, very focused on. And as has been said, we've been focused on this since before the announcement of President Biden stepping down and choosing not to run for re-election. And so this is not new work for us. It is a continuation of our efforts because as we know, the work is the work is the work is the work all the time, no matter who's president, no matter who is in positions of power in this country. We are always looking to restore and to uphold the power of the people. And as our dear friend, Dr. Breonna Parker would say, these are our super friends. And I love my super friends because we are busy, very busy, brilliant, and bossy. And it is all three of those things that brings us together in this super powerful group and coalition. And so, I think that Until Freedom and our role here as a social justice organization that is on the ground in many places around this country, our role is to ensure that our people are always going from protest to politics. The protests are important because it helps us to bring awareness to major issues happening in communities across the country and looking at how those issues connect on a national level. But we cannot stop there at protests. We have to ensure that we take those boots and march all the way to the voting polls, that we march to the city council meetings, that we march to wherever people are making decisions about what takes place in this country and in our local communities. And I think, one of the examples of that is the work that Until Freedom and our partners, many of you, all of you, helped us to do work in Kentucky, in Louisville, Kentucky, but in the state of Kentucky, from Breonna Taylor, of course, being our sister that we have fought very, very hard for. We advocate for justice for Breonna Taylor. We still stand with her family. We led, along with the local organizers there in Kentucky, most of the work that took place in 2020 and have stayed with that family and that community for the last 4+ years. But we did not stop at the protests. We took it all the way to several things, and not just the one big one, which was to ensure that Daniel Cameron, who was assigned as the special prosecutor to investigate and ultimately bring charges against the officers who killed Breonna Taylor, and he failed to do so. But there are other individuals on a local level that we have helped to get elected to public office. And that is information that we can share on background so that I'm not sitting here trying to pull all of the names, because it's actually been that many people that we have helped to get elected to public office, folks that were not, it wasn't even their direction at the time that we went into Louisville, Kentucky, but they decided through the work and the empowerment of all of us coming together that they wanted to make a difference. And now they are leaders, public leaders in the Louisville, Kentucky area and in the state of Kentucky. But Daniel Cameron is obviously one of the most important work that we did there, stopping him from becoming governor. He believed that after disrespecting Breonna Taylor's family, after disrespecting the community and the country, quite frankly, because what happened to Breonna Taylor, we now see Sonia Massey is yet another example of why we have to have police accountability in this country. And so we had to set an example and use Daniel Cameron as one to know that you cannot get promoted from attorney general to governor after you did not do what was necessary to bring accountability in Kentucky to, you know, as it relates to what happened to Breonna. And so we've really proven that we understand the model. We've been able to help bring our people. I was just telling Pastor Mike earlier today that I was talking with one of the protesters in Kentucky in 2020. He came over to me and said, I don't even know who Daniel Cameron is. Can you explain more? And how do we get rid of him? And I can tell you that 4 years later, he was there with us in the trenches, organizing, helping us get people registered to vote. And he went and cast his ballot against Daniel Cameron and for Andy Beshear in the most recent election. And so that is our work. That is what Until Freedom seeks to do in this particular situation. We want to take this platform to the streets, because one thing we know is that as we educate people on Project 2025, we have heard them say many times, and Linda Sarsour, she will talk about it. She has been hard on us to say it is okay for us to educate, but we must also not just inspire, but make demands and ensure that our people don't just learn about what is bad, but figure out what we can do to make this country what we want it to be. And so that is what Project Freedom is all about. And if we can knock Daniel Cameron down, we can certainly bring our people up and make sure that they are able to hold Project Freedom as the direction for where we intend to go. Thank you. Excuse me, Michael Blake, should I be introducing the next individual? If you could do that, that'd be great.
No problem at all. For anyone that's just joining us again, this is the launch today of Project Freedom. OurProjectFreedom.com is the site. Again, 16 policy areas across 7 different states. We'll talk through the geography momentarily at this time. Now, let me keep this energy going right here. Let me ask for my dear sister, Linda Sarsour. Why don't you come up on next to come here? Then we'll go to Reverend Green. Then to our dear sister, DeWanna Thompson. We'll go in that order.
Thank you so much, Michael, Tamika, and all the folks that are on this call. These are my people. This is the people that I organize with and have been organizing with for a very long time. My name is Linda Sarsour, and I'm the co-founder and executive director of Empower Action Fund. We have been around for 8 years, and our sole mission is to organize Muslim American voters across the country. We have specific states that we organize with that coincide to the states that are centered here in Project Freedom. I am trying to help organize a community in this country that feels disenchanted and disenfranchised. And they are in the place where they must be inspired by an issue-based platform that speaks to their pain and speaks to their suffering. And I believe that Project Freedom is the way to mobilize Muslim American voters in key states where Muslim Americans will be the margin of victory. We're talking about states like Michigan. There is no pathway to a White House without a state like Michigan. There's no pathway to the White House without a state like Georgia. For example, in the state of Michigan, there are over 200,000 Muslim American voters. They have already demonstrated their political power through a campaign that I helped start back in February called Uncommitted. 104,000 people went to the polls in Michigan and casted their vote for Uncommitted. Georgia's a state where a demagogue like Donald Trump can win easily by 10,000, 15,000 votes. If we're able to inspire Muslim American voters in a state like Georgia to defeat Donald Trump and defeat Project 2025, that is not something that's all beneficial just to Muslim Americans, but that is something that's going to be beneficial to marginalized communities across the country. And we have a track record here. In 2020, we were the co-founders of this. In fact, we came back again in January 2021 after Donald Trump was defeated in the November election. We lived in the state of Georgia for over a month, left our families again so we can organize on special elections, and we're able to elect 2 Democratic senators from the state of Georgia. It's people like us who are outside on the front lines, speaking about the issues, moving our people around issues that have had major victories in this country. And we want to continue that work. We are credible messengers in our community. We are not critics without credentials. We stay honest. We stay authentic with our communities. And that is why we are going to be able to mobilize millions of voters across the country. We're also people that understand the tools. The voter activation network, we know how to tag voters. We understand who's been to the polls and who hasn't, being able to develop the list of reaching the most high potential voters, which the Democratic Party will call low propensity voters. That is the skill set that we have. We have the commitment, we have the passion, and we have the skills. And so we're looking forward to taking Project Freedom into communities in key states and helping us get back on track in this country while continuing to be critical of the moment that we are in, critical of those in power, but also putting forth an agenda. And I'll lastly say that has been the problem with motivating many communities of color, including my own. People are tired of fighting against everything, that we are always the communities on the defense. It's time for us to go on the offense and start allowing our people to believe that we also can fight for things. We also can demand things. And this is what Project Freedom gives us the opportunity to do. And I'm looking forward to doing that with our friends.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Linda. Reverend Stephen Green and then DeWanna Thompson.
Awesome. Thank you again to those who are watching online, those who are here with us. My name is Reverend Stephen A. Green, and I am the chairman of Faith for Black Lives and the pastor of the Greater Allen Cathedral of New York. Victor Hugo said, "There's nothing more important than an idea whose time has come." And our Project Freedom is a coalition of activists, faith leaders, and organizers, students, artists who have come together because we believe that an idea has come to fruition. This is our time in this moment, in the 60th anniversary of Freedom Summer, in which organizers moved towards the South to organize and to register voters for the 1964 election. Here we are 60 years later, recognizing the importance of this very moment. And so we are engaging faith leaders, we're engaging college students, we are looking to invest time and energy working with grassroots organizations in the 7 states that we have identified as priority states, but also recognizing that we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it is won. That this is not just about organizing people for a November 5th election. We're organizing people for power. The election day is not over on November the 5th. We recognize that we are continually building a pipeline of leadership, building and investing in infrastructure in communities so that we can actively have a coalition of folks who are ready on day one to implement our Project Freedom agenda, no matter who takes the oath of office on January the 20th. So we invite you across the country to join us, to register, to sign up, to make a donation, to invest in this freedom movement so that we can see the beloved community realized here in the United States of America and beyond. We're talking about the end of war, the end of poverty, the end of violence, the vision of Fannie Lou Hamer and Frederick Douglass now coming to fruition with another generation who is on the front line. Thank you so much.
Bless you, brother. DeWanna Thompson.
Thank you all so much for allowing me to be and share with you all today. I feel like so much has already been said. The voices that you've heard before me have really been the leaders that I follow and that I trust as I have navigated on behalf of our organization, Woke Vote. We are a C3 and a C4 training organization. Our goal is to always mobilize and also train the next generation of leaders who come from the communities that are most impacted. So to date, we've trained over 350 fellows through our program, and we've activated over 3 million voters across the country. And it's important that we talk about this in this moment because that work doesn't happen just in an election cycle. You've heard everyone say already that the fight that is in front of us is one that if we had just started putting our gloves on today, we would be significantly behind. And so the wonderful thing and the thing that I'm most encouraged by is that everybody on this call, we know our communities. We know who our leaders are. We know who are the folk who are going to activate. We know where the communities are that most feel that they don't have a voice, and we've been a part of those communities. There's a quote that I like to remind people. It says, while good news is putting its shoes on, bad news has traveled the world twice. Project 2025 is bad news, right? It's traveled, it's gone into some of our communities so fast that it's created a unnecessary level of fear, and it was done intentionally. And so we are bringing the good news. We're bringing the not alternative news, we are bringing the truth because we understand that there has been a visceral attack on the truth. And so when you are getting ready to line up behind us, when you're activating with us through this project, this freedom project, through the freedom to live, the freedom to learn, the freedom to vote, and the freedom to thrive, you are going to be bearers of the truth. We are going to stand 10 toes down on the ideals that we believe are critical for our communities. And we know that when we fight for voting, when we fight for autonomy, when we fight for the opportunities for us to have families that are fed well, that are educated well, that have good jobs, that have good homes, it doesn't just support our African-American communities. It doesn't just support communities of color. Everybody rises when we rise. And so this is a day where we're excited. We're excited and we're honored to be able to bring the truth in a different way, to combat the darkness with the light. And the Woke Vote is super excited to be a part of that. We continue to do our training. We have our freedom schools that we do on the ground that's training people on not just how to activate for a voter for election time, but how to build systemic power so that you can address issues every single day in the community. While everybody might be looking at what's going on with the presidential election, there are significant races up and down the ballot for many states. And we know that there's been a signaling of shifting power back to the states. So we got to be prepared for that. We got to understand where our powers, our pocket powers lie. And so we're excited to make sure that that is a focus as a part of our work that we're doing this year. And we're leaning in to make sure that not only are people getting the information, not only are they being asked to vote, but they're getting the tools and the resources that they need to take this work beyond Election Day. So I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to fight with all of these power leaders on this call today.
Thank you, and God bless. And the reality, everyone, is, as you can see, this is a coalition. This is not just one organization. This is multiple organizations that have been successful across this country that came together to be ready to demonstrate very clearly freedom. That is our banner. And so very clearly our effort in this regard, it is not about a candidate. It is not about a party. It is about our people. And so, again, we have 16 policy items that we're very clear around, that we're highlighting, 7 different states that we're focused upon. Today being the launch for anyone who's just joining us to the launch of Project Freedom, our projectfreedom.com. I want to go back to Pastor Mike because it's important for us to say a word around the ending of gun violence and reimagining safety, giving the rhetoric that has already begun this week and is sustained, why it's so important for that to be a critical issue, a part of our conversation. Pastor Mike?
Absolutely. Just wanted to chime back in and offer that part of the ridiculousness of Project 2025 is that it makes all kinds of assumptions about the work that has happened and the work that is happening and the work that must continue to happen. Many of us on this call and many in our collective network have been working for well over 25 years to end the mass criminalization and the mass incarceration of Black and brown folks, to end the mass criminalization of our Muslim loved ones, to ensure that Black and brown communities are not overdetermined by gun violence. And because of this decades-long effort of organizing, we have started to see the results of the gun violence rates literally at a 50-year low after it had an unfortunate spike during COVID. Project 2025 does not address the sustainability of that. And we may also say that it is not always a guarantee that both parties have a commitment to the long-term sustainability of addressing community safety, which means that we do not have to overly rely on law enforcement, punitiveness, and the prison carceral system to secure safety and security in our communities. Obviously, the recent killing of Sonia Massey has reminded us that there are too many rogue police officers who are unaccountable in our communities, wreaking havoc, and Project 2025 would not solve that problem. We believe it would actually exacerbate it. I'll just close by saying, in our Live Free Network and our Black, Brown Gun Violence Prevention community across the country, a Black, Brown Peace Consortium, in every one of these states, we have active, vibrant networks of peacemakers, intervention specialists, public health workers, organizers, policy individuals. All are continuing to do the work, whether we get the recognition or not. We want to ensure that Project 2025 does not dismantle that. And we certainly want to keep the pressure on the Democratic Party and the new, it appears to be, presidential nominee to keep investing in these strategies. We believe the boldness and audacity of Project 2025 putting on paper what many of us have always thought was a conspiracy has allowed us to understand they feel emboldened. And so now we are emboldened publicly to defeat Project 2025 with our people, pushing, organizing, loving on one another, building the power necessary. And I believe we will win, as we always have.
Pastor Mike, thank you for dropping that knowledge out here. It's always good when you got pastors out here. Good information is always going to happen here. So again, just for context, and we'll open the floor so everybody's on the same page of what we are talking about today. For anyone that's just joined us, and thank you for the multiple reporters that are on the line. Today is the launch of Project Freedom. Project Freedom, the focus of our effort is 16 policies. This is not just about countering a Project 2025, which is essential to do. It's also us giving an aspirational vision of what we deserve and saying very clearly, we deserve to have freedom. We deserve to have the ability to dream and to achieve that. The states that we chose in particular were very specific and strategic. As Linda mentioned, Michigan, a critical state that we have all worked in, that we have seen over the last few years, the urgency of people of Michigan wanting to know who's actually listening to us right now. North Carolina, a state that has essentially been a one-point state that has gone back and forth throughout the Obama years and then Biden and Trump. Now a place that is effectively a critical space to see who's going to be serious around their organizing itself. You can't ignore Nevada and all the different demographics that are happening in Nevada, in particular in Las Vegas, because of what's going on in terms of congressional race, the Senate race, and the impact on the national election. Obviously, we've talked about Georgia. We as a people are not going to allow Georgia, especially given the conversations that have been happening in Georgia, of making it harder for people to vote, where it being illegal to have water to be in line for vote, to say, you know what, we're going to give you, again, an aspirational vision to believe around. Pennsylvania, when you think about all that has happened, a state that folks sometimes ignore, 6 hours apart between Philly and Pittsburgh. And so all of our different communities, Pennsylvania, for perspective, had the second largest increase of Puerto Ricans other than Florida in the last several election cycles. We have to make sure, again, we're mobilizing our respective communities, which is why New York is a part of this as well. How we make sure all the energy that's happening in New York is a part of this conversation itself. And then Ohio, so simply put, we're not going to have allow an anti-DEI rhetoric to go unchecked. There is too much opportunity and too much momentum that exists there. So with that, let's open it up for any reporters who may have questions at this time. We see several on the line who have been doing the work itself. We see Philip, I see Cheyenne, I see several others on there. Let's open it up for any questions from any of the press at this time.
I'll go first. Thank you, everyone, for doing this call. Let me ask as a first question, and particularly for Michael and Tamika, but everyone can chime in. Do you see that, how do you see the death of Sonia Massey, right, changing the political dynamics of this, particularly after the failures of the George Floyd Policing Act. And duly with that and coupled with that, do you see Vice President Harris, although not necessarily considered by many progressives to be the most progressive potential candidate, do you see her closer to this agenda than President Biden?
Well, she's the co-author of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. So obviously, this was part of what is in the bill are her ideas. I think that that's a good sign. But what we do know is that the bill has been watered down over time. And there were many reasons why that happened. We worked very closely with Senator Booker on trying to keep the bill as strong as possible, including ending qualified immunity. And we lost that after a while, which was a huge blow to the bill. And so hopefully those things will be restored. I believe this is an opportunity for us to renew our energy around getting this bill passed. The executive order was good that it happened from a symbolism perspective, but it does not have in it all of the elements that need to be there, and it's not as strong as it should be. When we think about the officer who killed Sonia Massey, his record should have disqualified him from being a police officer in this country. Number one, we know that he was discharged from the armed forces and he has a dishonorable discharge. We also know that he moved around to 6 different police departments within 4 years. Some of the allegations against him range from lying on documents to tasing a young teenage boy. This man was already problematic. And in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, there is the piece on the registry, which would mean that police departments and individuals, community members, would be able to look up an officer and track his history, his or her history. The problem is, and why we say that it needs to be strengthened, not just passed, but also strengthened, is because there is nothing that presents consequences and accountability if a police department hires a person like him anyway, knowing all of the information about the bad behavior and infractions of the past. And so there's a lot of work to do there. And I would hope that we see new energy around this particular, around the bill, because of the fact that we have this new moment, one, the unfortunate death of Sonia Massey, but also that one of the co-authors will more than likely be the nominee in the next few days.
And just real quick, as a follow-up there, Tamika, it sounds like what you're saying is that if the George Floyd Policing Act had passed, this officer wouldn't have been on the force in the first place and would have saved Sonia Massey's life. Is that correct assessment from what you just said?
Well, what I am saying is that the community and the other police departments would have known, and even if this police department that hired him, the last one or any of the others, even if they knew, they can deny it because at this point, the registry does not exist. The federal registry does not exist. But what is important and why I cannot say affirmatively that he would not have been hired or that it would have saved Sonia Massey's life is because currently there's no teeth in the bill. The bill does not have consequences. It is not linked to real accountability measures. So we want to see that there would be a component that says that there will be federal withholding of funds to police departments that hire people like this officer and other consequences for those departments and for the officer, directly. And ending qualified immunity would have given maybe, and again, it is an allegation that he tased this young boy. But if he did, the family would have been able to sue him directly. And so that would have, again, been another barrier to him being hired in another police department, which ultimately resulted in the loss of the killing of Sonia Massey.
Hi, all. Thank you so much for holding this presser for us. I do apologize for not having my camera on. Michael, I too have just gotten home, and let's just say I got that haggard look and I don't want to do that. So Y'all don't need to see me looking like that. But I understand that Project Freedom has been in the works, it sounds like, for some time. This is not something that just started, let's say, this week when news of the change in the top of the Democratic ticket or anything like that changed. Did this start when Project 2025 was released, or have you been working on this even before then?
I'll start by saying before then, because it started by the work of our respective coalitions that we've been moving. And we had all been watching under the Until Freedom banner, quite frankly, that more needed to be happened. That was an aspirational vision. What became very clear, though, because of Project 2025 and because of the election, whether it be Gaza and the impact we're seeing within Michigan and other states, whether it be the conversation around criminal justice, and quite frankly, a lack of sufficient excitement for people to be involved in the election, top to bottom, is that we had to give people something bigger, right? That we couldn't just keep watching a conversation of hoping people to get excited about two individuals when it was far, far bigger than that. And so, this is a continuation of the work that we've all been doing, but it became very clear that what was happening was not enough. And we were not doing right by our folks on the sidelines and not bringing our power together for this purpose. It was accelerated by the greater attention that's happening around Project 2025. We can't ignore that. And so when we came together and talked through the different ideas, the vision of freedom is what stayed true to all of us. And then staying true to that point was live. How do we live? How do we live free? How do we dream? And give ourselves that permission slip. So it's a both and to that. I would welcome whether it be Reverend Green or Linda Sarsour as well, who have, of course, additional perspective. But no one should be thinking that this all began this week or this month. We've been working on this for some time. We just knew that the time to come forward was today.
Yes,
Reverend Green or Linda?
I definitely want to echo the sentiment. Also, as I mentioned earlier in my remarks, to remind you that this is about also us celebrating the 60th anniversary of Freedom Summer, when Fannie Lou Hamer and SNCC organizers and others moved to Mississippi to organize and strengthen the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. When Fannie Lou Hamer spoke at the convention in Atlantic City and said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." And so all of this, even the calling and beckoning of history, calls us to move in this particular moment. And this is about setting an agenda for the future of the nation, the future in which we intend to build. We are all recognizing also that we're on the precipice of the 250th anniversary of the nation in 2026. And so Project Freedom is not as we said, this is not a 100-day campaign. This is a campaign to lead us for the next 100 years, really the next 250 years of American democracy.
Yes, thank you for that. And just as a quick follow-up, I know that it's been said today that this is not about one candidate, this is not about one party, this is about our people. Just as a follow-up to that, though, have there been any legislators or lawmakers that have come out, endorsed it, that you have been working with on any of these? Obviously, as Tamika mentioned, with the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, very clearly Vice President was involved in that. Any other lawmakers or legislators that have been involved in any of the policies and platforms that you're thinking of with Project Freedom?
They're aware, but today was about us launching on our terms to then be able to convey and communicate to everyone the vision that we wanted to lay out, so that we gave ourselves, quite frankly, the freedom of being able to say that this was not dictated by electeds nor candidates. This was organizations that came together to say, this is the vision that our communities want us to aspire to. Let me go to Linda Sarsour.
No, I think you just said exactly that, Michael, because it also gives us the freedom to critique some of the bills that we're pushing, because we need some of them to be strengthened. We need the opportunity to be able to have conversations around these bills. We started with foundational, practical bills that are already on the table, whether it's End Racial Profiling Act, whether it's George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, whether it's the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. These are things that are on the table, and things that are tangible, that when we talk to communities, we're able to basically move them around something that is not necessarily just idealistic and aspirational. There's a bill that has been drafted. There's something that's on the table that our communities could work towards. And I'll just add this about Project 2025. For us, I think a lot of our communities, as they started hearing about Project 25, and I always tell Tamika, I'm always in the comments. I go look at the shade room. I be trying to see what the people are saying. And one of the main things people were saying that also accelerated this for me, especially as I watched communities of color, they say, where's your Project 25? Y'all mad about Project 2025? What's your plan? And that's kind of even coming out of our own communities. Like they're just saying, you're over here telling me this man is bad. They got a bad plan. All the things are going to hurt me, but y'all don't got a plan. So why are you mad? Go make a plan and come back. We were already working on a plan, but we also wanted to give something that was a bit realistic. So not only are we saying we want to have the freedom to live freely, but we wanted to say, here are some things that could start us on that journey. Because I think people are also tired of the aspirational that's not connected to an actual plan. And I think we are balancing the aspirational of the world we want to live in, the country we want to live in, and saying to people, look, y'all want to be on this journey to freedom with us? Let's start here. So we're not saying that Justice for Policing Act is the way that's going to free our people or the way that's going to transform policing in America, but it's an absolute start. Same thing with End Racial Profiling Act, same thing with many of the policies that you see listed. These are beginnings of a journey towards the things that we want. And I think that is going to excite our base. And we're going to be able to say, Project 2025 is this, and we are this. And I think a lot of community organizations don't have the this clearly. And we're trying to be the ones to put forth this type of work plan that I think could bring people out to the polls, at least this upcoming election.
Absolutely.
If I could just jump in on that and just say that, when we knock on doors, which we will be doing extensively, we go to communities where, they're not always reached. People don't always knock on their doors. They're looked at as communities that there's no investment and no reason to go to them because more than likely they won't vote anyway. That is what we've been told. Linda always says they are called low propensity voters, but we look at them as high potential voters. And when we go to the door, it's not that they don't know what's going on. They're very clear and they want to know, well, what do we do next? How do we deal with the issues and concerns that we have in this particular community? Don't tell me about Washington, D.C. I want to know about my block, my street, my corner. How are we going to address the issues here and even in my home? And so I think that Project Freedom is something that we can put in their hand where we're not leaving them with a pamphlet about just voting and what polling site to go to, but we're leaving them with a document, a resource tool so that they can say, this is the specific issue that I'm concerned about, and here's what we're fighting for. And it empowers them to be more than just voters, but to be advocates in their communities.
Absolutely. And just for organizational awareness, this is a collaboration. Until Freedom, Live Free, Faith for Black Lives, Kairos Democracy Project, all of us coming together under this banner of Project Freedom. Again, two focuses. We envision a nation where we can do so many things to be free, and also making sure people consider the nation and what Project 2025 would be. Press, any other questions at this time from the reporters that are on the line? We see several of them on the line right now.
Hi, Beatrice Peterson, ABC News. I was wondering if you guys can talk a little bit about, I know Tamika just mentioned earlier, some of the battleground states and the importance of targeting the four that you guys picked and why it is important for these battleground areas that you've decided to prioritize over some of the other battleground states and areas.
Well, happy to start, and I'm going to ask for Reverend Green to come in after me on that because we talk about these states a lot here. So first and foremost, you think about Michigan, and also Linda. Michigan is the epitome of why you had to give an aspirational vision to the people. You had tens of thousands who decided, I am not voting because I am not excited about any of this. I do not believe my voice is being heard. And we got to be clear about that. And so we couldn't let it sit on the sideline. And we see, again, it's a state like Pennsylvania that can easily flip in either direction. And so Black and brown voters making the determination of Michigan, but we had to give that clarity that we had to give you to be free. Pennsylvania, you can't ignore the magnitude of it. Every state, every place sees what's going on and sees what's happening and mobilizing in that regard. You think about going on to out west, Nevada, the efforts of the Economic Prosperity Summit that happened just about 2 weeks ago. It's the epitome of diversity. When you have an NAACP on one day and a UNIDOS on the next day, and you're a National Bar Association as well, Black and brown communities will make the difference in what happens in a congressional race, a Senate race, and a presidency there. North Carolina, the epitome of Black colleges, obviously a state that has North Carolina A&T, greatest homecoming on earth, as stated, right? We all understand that. It's impossible for us to be talking about the South and not having that there. And so for the overall dynamic of what we're achieving, it is the excitement of all of our collective groups as part of this. And so we looked at the capacity of all of our organizations and that we're ready. And you're starting to see them listed out in the chat, many of partners that are a part of this effort here accordingly in the chat. And so we're excited about that. For Until Freedom, for Woke Vote, for Live Free, for Faith in Action, for Faith Black Lives, for Kairos Democracy Project, for all of our causes, we saw those states as the most critical out the gate. Now, on top of that, Beatrice, to your question, the additional ones that we're mapping out are New York. You can't ignore New York's impact on this election because of the congressional races, but also the impact in terms of the border state and battleground state of Pennsylvania. Ohio, for all the reasons that we're seeing, especially given, J.D. Vance being the lead sponsor of an anti-DEI bill, we can't ignore that as well. And then Georgia clearly has had that impact, being the state that determined things accordingly there. Reverend Green and others who want to share empower change, also obviously we meant to highlight that as well. The importance of the states that we selected for Beatrice and others to hear.
I'm gonna go first, and then I'll follow.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop after this because I got another call. But what I will also say, in addition to everything that Michael Blake said, it's also mapping the states where we have infrastructure, we have partnerships on the ground, and we understand how to move in those states. We've organized, for example, both Empower Action. We've, of course, are known for our work in Michigan. That's a state that I've been organizing for the last 14 years. It's one of the states that gave Bernie Sanders the biggest political upset in presidential history when he won that primary back in 2016, and also made history with the uncommitted campaign this year. Same thing with some of these states like North Carolina, Georgia. There are significant Muslim populations who are not always included in progressive electoral politics. They're often kind of left on the sidelines, and I don't want to leave a vote on the table. So for us, again, the infrastructure, we've organized around police violence cases across the country. And as part of organizing around police violence cases, we've been able to develop relationships with grassroots organizers on the ground. And that is the most important thing that we bring to the table, that it's not just we analyze that these states are battleground, because to your point, there are additional states that could be on this list that are also battleground, but we are going to the battleground states where we have the most influence, the most partnerships, and where we have a track record of doing good work, and where we are also connected to major infrastructure that we have built over the last, respectively for all of us together. Some of us have been doing this work for a very long time. We're old now. Some of them have been doing national organizing for the last over 2 decades. And so that's the places where we don't have to do too much start work. Like, we could just get going. The minute we get on the ground, we could start moving around. And that's the most important thing. We got no time.
Absolutely. And I think Linda said it so perfectly, that these are the places where we are connected to people on the ground, and we're going to amplify the work that our partners are doing on the ground by bringing this coalition and our momentum together. And I think that's what makes this campaign very unique. That's what makes this campaign one that is going to make a dent in this election and beyond, is because of our collegiality and camaraderie already with local organizers, and one vehicle to be able to push us to the future that we imagine and dream.
If I could just jump in really quickly, and I noticed that,
please.
Yeah, Robert asked the question in the chat and said he couldn't get off, but he said, how does it look like to get the word out to our audiences about this? And I think what is critical to note is that most of our organizations, mine included, have been on the ground actually activating since January. And we have been asking and telling people for decades that you have to start early, right? You cannot come at the last minute. So we are able to actually take this message, implant it in the work that we're currently doing, And that message is already going to be amplified by the more than 200 and something people that we already have on the ground in North Carolina who've been activated all year. And so I think it's important for that, but also aligning it with messages like the very fact that the literacy test is still on the ballot in North Carolina this year. So the same literacy test that was used in most places across the South to keep voters from being able to vote, we have copies of that. We take that literacy test, we blow it up, and people get so angry about the fact that that happened in the 50s and 60s. And we're like, hey, you do realize it's on the ballot this year in North Carolina. So when you're able to apply something very critical like, hey, here's what's happening on this ballot this year with the systemic issues that have happened, over decades, it creates a different kind of atmosphere for people wanting to activate differently. And so I think that's really important for us to note. And I think also it's important for us to note that people were really tired of a Black body being the seed that made people get activated. We did not want to just have to activate around a Sonia. We didn't want to just have to activate around a George Floyd. We wanted to activate around a policy agenda that meant something deep for our people, that didn't trigger them to activate, but motivated them to activate. And so this allows us to do that and to layer it with the most intentional platforms for the states that we've already been in, the issues that we've already been able to activate around, which we heard directly from the community that they were concerned about, and allowed them to be the voices of that work on the ground.
Michael, if you don't mind, go ahead.
I would love for Tamika to highlight one component to the question before we come back to Philip for a second. To Beatrice's question, influencers and infrastructure, right? To the question, right? There's opportunities that we have here. And to DeWanna's point that we want people to be excited. Many people may not realize, for example, in the state of Michigan has a Black woman up for election to the Supreme Court. I mean, there are transformational efforts that are happening across the country that people can be excited about to mobilize around. So, but to Beatrice's question, I want to be very direct on that. We have infrastructure in these places. We're not starting from scratch. We have influencers who trust our voices to decide how they want to be engaged. And we have an immediacy around this. I mean, people keep talking about November 5th. In many of these states, early voting begins at the end of September. And so our power was greater if we came together. But I would love for Tamika, before we come back to Philip, to highlight there are many influencers and artists and those that have platform who have trusted our voice for years, which is another reason why it was time for us to create this now.
Right. Well, so in this particular project, this platform, I don't want to say that anyone has committed specifically, but they always commit because they know our work. And it just, giving you the most recent example, if we look at, again, going back to Kentucky, so many of the influencers got involved from beginning to end. We know Alicia Keys helped to lead the efforts to get women involved in the Breonna Taylor matter. It was Alicia Keys, Ellen DeGeneres was with us during that time. Also, Jada Pinkett Smith, Rhapsody. And so there was a diverse group of women that came together to help us with the no-knock warrants legislation in Kentucky, and then stayed involved, and then came back and re-engaged, thinking about MC Lyte. They re-engaged when it was time to challenge Daniel Cameron. And so these folks are waiting for us to provide them with this platform so that they can have it vetted, which we know that it passed the test, because this is the stuff that they've been asking, where is it? Give it to me so I could go out and inform my community. And we're doing that. We've already pushed the information to them. We know that their teams are looking at how they can help to promote, endorse, support our work. And I have faith that once they are able to see the finished product, they will want to join us. And so that's work that I'm responsible for doing. And Michael Blake is on me every day to ensure that I don't miss 1 hour of sending the emails, making the contact. And certainly we understand that for influencers, they need to know that whatever platform we put forward is something that truly serves the community and something that they can get behind, and they don't have to worry. They are sure that we're going to actually do the work, because that is the other part. There are a lot of organizations out here that will tell you that, they're on the ground, but not everyone sees them. Not everyone knows them. Not everyone feels they don't have the credibility. And so the influencers who work with us, that's something that they are comfortable with. So we're doing that work. But also, as has been said, everyone here, all of us who are on this call, we, even in the space of the social media universe, we have credibility. When we speak, people listen. People know about Project 2025, but there is a void in this moment, because while they are trying to educate on one thing, they need something else to be able to say, no, this is what America should look like. These are the things that we should be fighting for. Out with Project 2025 and in with Project Freedom. And so as soon as we, are able to go live with this platform, I believe that we will see many people who have been sharing information about Project 2025 saying, hey, I found this other platform, or I know of this other platform, and I know the credible messengers who are behind it.
Absolutely. We'll come to Philip for the last question, to be cognizant of time. Philip, please.
No problem, man. Once again, Philip Bailey with USA Today. I think Tamika is right. Like, as a Louisville, Kentucky native, someone who got to see that from the front lines of people being engaged. But let me ask a critical question here. A lot of those folks who live and exist in that social justice sphere, who remember Michael Brown, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, have a lot of scars and bruises from those movements. What do you say to those folks who are skeptical of the vice president, skeptical of her and her record, who still refer to her as Kamala the cop, even though a lot of that is being deciphered out by our news organization and others? What do you say to those, any of you can answer this, what do you say to those who are very skeptical of her and say she's not the person who I trust to push for this agenda, or who would support an agenda like this?
I want someone else to speak. I'm actually going to have to drop myself because I have another interview, but I just want to say that we're very clear that the euphoria of the moment will pass and the work has to continue. And so I respect those who say that they don't trust, because we don't trust the process at all. I know, and obviously others on this call know the vice president well, have had many encounters with her. And we know that she is a person who understands, she gets it, she gets the issues, and she listens. And so that's a good thing. That's a good start. But we also understand the system is the system, and the system was not built to protect people of color, vulnerable people, Black folks, of course. And so we have to constantly be in a position and in a posture of fighting for what we believe in and demanding the things that's in this platform and beyond. And so the message is always for us that we're not voting for our friend. We are voting for the opponent that we believe we can move closer to our issues. And I think that in this particular moment, not speaking on behalf of this platform, I'm speaking on behalf of Tamika Danielle Mallory only, that I don't believe we will even be able to have a conversation, as we were not able to with Donald Trump in his first presidency, hopefully his only presidency. I don't believe that he's the opponent that we will even be able to fight, because they're considering things like arresting protesters who look like us, right? Organizers who look like us. And so I believe that she's a better opponent in this moment.
And I agree. I think, Philip, your question speaks to a lot of the conversations and chatter that we often hear on the ground. But I think what motivates this campaign is to really focus on the 14 policy areas that we're talking about, and really looking at freedom as the pathway, and that voting is one tool in our arsenal that we're going to use to fight. that voting is not the end all be all of our framework of our fight for freedom, but voting is on the pathway. And I think as long as we do not, and what we're intentional about in our messaging is to ensure that this is not tied to any personality. This is tied to the policies that we see, not just on, as DeWanna mentioned, on the federal level, but also down ballot, state and local. So this vision of reparative justice, what does that look like in your city council elections? What does that look like in your state legislature elections? So that is the framework in which we're intending to build a new vision and a radical vision, so we can build a larger army to be able to continue to fight moving forward.
And real quick, to say your name and title one more time, Reverend Green, just to be sure.
Reverend Stephen A. Green, Chair of Faith for Black Lives.
Just to tie those together, and this actually goes to one of the earlier questions itself. We were talking about this agenda and this vision of justice well before Sunday. So it's not specific to her, but as it relates to the vice president, this is also a time to make sure that there's an education campaign of the things that she did that were inspirational and transformational and positive while she was a DA, because too often the conversation becomes one of, well, you were a DA and prosecutor, so you just must be bad, right? And so again, this is not about endorsing one or another, but it is about empowering people to actually know the truth and facts. And when it comes to justice, too often what we are seeing is a argument and a framing to divide us rather than to educate and empower us. And the next 103 days has to be a part of Project Freedom doing that. But lastly, this is not just about this election. It's about things that are so much bigger beyond it, right? It is giving us ourselves permission to dream about the democracy that we deserve. And as Reverend Green has been consistently saying to us, 2026 being the 250th anniversary, we got to help people to elevate this to a much higher level. We see one in the chat. So to the question, we will make this the last one that's in the chat, because we know folks have to go here. Don't want to hold this up. Maybe some follow up with you. The sweet irony of Project 25 catching negative connotation in this moment when the right has a history of strategic attaching negative connotations. Yeah, it just seems. I'm gonna give this to DeWanna, because I think woke vote is the perfect frame to clap back on what's going on in the chat right there.
I think what the reality is that as an organization that is named Woke Vote, and the attack that the right has put on words like woke, what we've said is that you don't get to define our words and our movements. And I think this is the opportunity with our project, Freedom, is to define this for us, but also to allow those who the gentleman asked earlier, I think it was Philip, those who do feel disenfranchised or disassociated at this point with it. I think what brings them back to the table is that they're not disassociated from us. We've been speaking the truth for a very long time. So when our people hear the word woke, they know what we mean. They know no one else can tell them what we mean. So when they hear Project Freedom, they're going to know exactly what that means. And they're not going to challenge us as it relates to what is really behind our agenda. That may be happening on the right. We can't stop that from happening. And we quite frankly welcome that, because it means that we're doing our job. But we won't bow down to them dismantling our language or revisioning our language or revisioning our words. It's very important that we stand true to the truth behind our movements, the truth behind our words, the truth behind our language, because we chose those words intentionally because of the people that we are engaged with. That those words mean something to them, and they're rooted in a context of history, and they're rooted in a context of those who came before us. They used these words, and so we're excited about that. We're excited to push back against any of that.
Absolutely. So as we bring this all home, again, ourprojectfreedom.com.
Excuse me, Michael, I'm sorry. Please don't cut me off until I'm cut off the thing until I finish dropping all the names in here.
Absolutely. We're listing out for anyone that's just joining the full listing of the coalition that is all a part of us right here. Again, for anyone that may be just joining, Project Freedom, we're launching it today. OurProjectFreedom.com. Our freedom's at risk, but we have freedom to dream. This is a multi-organizational coalition and our friend, we tell everybody it's time to get focused. We got 16 parts of our policy platform that we're talking through and highlighting around Project Freedom, that what we want to envision. And beyond it is a counter to Project 2025. You are seeing on this Zoom many of our partners here, in Tamika Mallory, Duana Thompson, Reverend Stephen Green, Pastor Mike McBride, Angelo Pinto, brilliant attorney, co-founder for Until Freedom, Linda Sarsour, who had to drop off a little bit earlier with Empower. And all of our different partners are part of this work. This is the coalition, again, so that we give ourselves permission to dream about the democracy that we deserve and saying that we deserve to be free. So we ask you to join us. We encourage you to join us. When you go to OurProjectFreedom.com, you will see the information there in terms of the two parts of the platform that's aspirational and then the counter and awareness on Project 2025. We encourage you all to please support our cause. Your support allows us to mobilize in the 7 states that we have discussed earlier in this call so that you can be a part of the effort of what we are doing, not just for this election, but throughout. I'm going to ask for Tamika Mallory to close us out, because Tamika always has a powerful point around the framing of freedom. Like,
can I just ask one question really quickly? I'm so sorry that I joined so late. Did any of the organizations co-hosting this today make any candidate endorsements on this call?
We did not.
Okay, thank you.
I am going to say that until freedom, until freedom, until freedom. And I'm going to ask Reverend Stephen Green to give the inspirational word so that I can continue doing this, what I'm doing over here.
Right. I want to thank you all again for being with us as members of the press. And of course, on behalf of our coalition, this has been a labor of love because we love our people. And not only because we love our people, we love our nation. And I think that's one thing that we have to really ground ourselves in, is that this is driven by the love of people who love the nation that has never loved us back fully. But yet we still hold on to the vision and the dream of creating a society that one day we will all be free in, and to live and to realize the beloved community here in the United States of America and beyond. And so we want to thank you for your support. We look forward to Project Freedom being on the ground, whether we're protesting on behalf of our dear sister Sonia or Massey, or we're going to be at the Black Caucus holding a party. Whatever we're going to do, we're going to be there on behalf of our people to advance this vision and to enact Project Freedom into the hearts and minds of all of the people of this country, and to change the hearts and minds of those in this country.
Really quickly before I thank you, Pastor Green, I just want to make sure you mentioned rallying for Sonia Massey and for all those from the media who were here on this Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There are groups gathering all over the country to have a national day of mourning for Sonia Massey. And so in New York City, we will be holding a rally at Washington Square Park. But there are rallies happening all over the country in more than 10 cities. And some of them are being posted on our social media. We will have something very comprehensive, one document that I'm sure Michael's team will be able to get to you all today so that you are able to see how far and wide folks have gathered or are gathering across the country to support the family of Sonia Massey and also to hold the National Day of Mourning for her.
So be on the lookout on our site, OurProjectFreedom.com. There'll be a rollout of activations itself, many efforts that are coming up, several of which September 21st down in Selma, the Just Vote rally, itself, that we want to make sure that people are aware of our national efforts that are happening across the country. Of course, as Reverend Green mentioned, you will see us all across this country in a very powerful and active way. And, again, it is time for us to give people permission to dream and to remind people that we deserve our freedom. And that is why we're here today. So to members of the press and everyone, thank you for joining us.